Hello and welcome to our webinar today. Before we get started, I will just give everyone a minute or two just to get logged in. So it'll just be 2 minutes and then we'll be getting started. Okay, welcome to our webinar today on what is EDI. Today we'll be covering the fundamentals of electronic trading and how they help business operations. At the end of the session, we'll be holding a short Q&A session. So please do send your questions through via the chat function and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. My name is Robert Simpson and I'm the Marketing Director at TrueCommerce, and I'm joined today by my colleague Keith Gallagher, who is going to take us through the webinar today. At this point, I will pass the reins over to Keith and I'll let him introduce himself. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you, Robert. I'm Keith Gallagher. I'm a sales executive based out of TrueCommerce, Ireland. We have operations worldwide, and I head up the Irish division of things. Today's webinar, we will be working through what is EDI, giving some background into where it started, how it's developed, and where it is now. What does that mean to you as well? So just having a look at the agenda here. First topic is what is EDI? So we'll break down what that three-letter acronym actually means and go through the detail of it. How does it work? Fundamentally, what sits beneath all of this? So what's the applications and the hardware that makes this work in reality? Who is it for? So you're probably joining this webinar to see if EDI is for you or should it be something you're looking at. We'll go through the different types of EDI. We'll explain who they fit, what's the best fit for you perhaps. And then we'll look at the benefits. There is a reason that EDI has been around for as long as it has been, is that it does bring benefits, be it cost, be it efficiencies. We'll walk through each of those to see how they could work for you. So what is EDI? Simply the acronym breaks down to electronic data interchange. That's what EDI means. A lot of times people will never ever come across using that in its fullest term, but that's what we mean when we say EDI. So the use of computers and networks to exchange documents in a standardized format, and that's the crux of it. That's the principal understanding as to what EDI does for you. And so any business document that you can exchange today using email, letters, paper, anything you want to do in terms of exchanging documents can be done in an electronic format. And it's how you go about doing that EDI really surrounds. So EDI enables the fast, accurate, and reliable exchange of business transactions between computer systems of customers and suppliers. So the important pieces to focus on that is that it's an exchange of documents between business systems. So the systems themselves have to have intelligence to be able to understand what the message is without having to have a human interaction along the way to sort of explain what it means. To do that, you need to use a standardized format and you need to send it over a fixed way so that it knows who it's coming from, why it's coming from them, and what the breakdown of that message is. So types of EDI, when we look at the business messages that are involved with it, they're the typical business messages that you come into contact with daily. I would say that the most often ones that we will see within EDI are the purchase order and invoice, along with the credit, I guess, would be the ones we see by far the most. And the reason is that with your trading partners, they're going to be the message that you want to exchange the highest volume of. Outside of that, there are businesses that have opted to bring on additional messages because there are other forms of paper flowing from their business to their various trading partners, and they want to utilize the systems that they have in play today to get more usability from that, get more automation along the way on it. So order acknowledgement, which we sometimes see in sort of a European context, more so US, would use acknowledgements a lot more. It seems more of a reluctance to believe that there's been a successful handover unless you get an acknowledgement over there. Within a European context, we tend to believe that if it's gone out via EDI, that it's been accepted on the other side of things. We'll go into how that works in reality and where a managed service adds an extra check along the way. But in its most basic sense, we just believe that if it goes out over a van, it's in a structured format, it's going to be accepted on the other side of things. These things don't get lost along the way. Advanced shipping notices. So if you have a backdoor system and you want to have forewarning of what stock is coming in and when, advanced shipping notices is a great way of doing that. It allows you to forecast and plan a lot better in that you know which stock on the order is coming in, you know what date it's specifically coming in, you know what operators you have to have available to take it in at the back door. Proof of delivery and a goods receipt note are documents then that would typically be picked up on at the back door when stock has came in. So if you're a supplier and you are challenged on an invoice has been submitted, typically you want to be able to show your delivery docket. I guess for the same reason, if you're that retailer and you've got a backdoor process built up around this, you want to be able to accept your goods receipt note so that you can see that absolutely this was taken in the back door, was checked by our guys at the back door, and we definitely booked in that amount of product so that we're being invoiced correctly. So it's all just documents that help us along the way. If we can put them into an electronic format, it just makes them more available, and it means that we can do automated checks against documents. So you might want to check your invoice against a goods receipt note would be a common one if you're a retailer. So you want to make sure that the invoices you're receiving in match up to what stock you've actually taken in. It's a nice way to check that you're being billed correctly at the front gate. And then ones I guess we see less, but they are certainly out there in the ecosystem of EDI is the likes of remittance and price files. So again, it's just an exchange of documentation. So outside of these ones, we'd often see likes of warehousing, stock movement, transactions as well. So typically anything that you exchange with your customers or your suppliers today via paper, there is an electronic format around that, and it's in a structured EDI format. So without EDI, I guess if you're coming from a background where you're not using EDI today, this is potentially how it works for you today. So you'll be very familiar with it. And for most of us, this is how we deal with anyone that isn't on EDI as well. So any of our partners that don't use EDI, it's a more old-fashioned approach to it, whereby there's a lot of human intervention and duplication of effort. So purchase order will be raised by the customer, will go out to the supplier via email, fax, telephone, whatever way it may go out today. It's then manually entered into their system, and an order is created, the order is entered onto their system for picking on their internal systems. The stock then goes out, and we get the likes of order acknowledgements and delivery notes exchanged with it. And then lastly, the invoice is sent out from the supplier. Again, a manual effort of typing up that invoice, correlating it to make sure that it's correct with what's gone out, and sending it across then. And the most frustrating part of this process is that on both sides of the equation, there's business systems that involve putting the detail in and out. And I guess how EDI attends to this is that it tries to automate that. It removes the duplication of effort. We only really need to put the data in once to exchange it, and then it can be fed in to the secondary system. So EDI in 1985. So where it began, I guess, is closely aligned to where it is now. There's a reason it's still there, is that it does add value, and how it does that is using the same principles, same underpinning principles along the way. So business systems of the customer needs to match up to their supplier's business systems. To do that, we need to have a common format, which is the EDI format that we typically put it in, or the container that we put it in. So it will be the likes of your EDIFACT or TrueCommerce or ANSI X12. And we exchange that over a middle buffer using a VAN as it's described in the clouds. And if you've been approached about EDI, you've probably heard about a VAN. So a VAN is a value-added network, which is a secure end-to-end delivery mechanism. More so these days, we tend to use the VAN certainly, but we're starting to use more internet protocol along the way in the form of FTP and AS2. So just getting to that, actually, if we look at what we do today, it doesn't look a huge amount different. The difference that is there and underpins it all is that the infrastructure has changed a huge amount in that we can now access any of these documents on whatever device we have, be it mobile, be it laptop, and we log into a cloud-based server. We don't have to have a big piece of hardware on our end of things in the form of a server. We can access this stuff in the web. Our application is fully web enabled, and it's certainly the way that EDI is going and will continue to go. There isn't a big cost upfront in terms of putting these things in anymore. It's all cloud-based and accessible. As you can see, the VAN still resides in the middle. It still plays a part in the equation on it. But we can link up with your customer or suppliers in whatever way they prefer. So talking about EDI standards and connectivity options, this is the next thing I think that falls on people's plates when they're not familiar with EDI. And it's a bit of a head scratcher because they haven't came across it before. They're not terms that we use outside of EDI. They are very specific to EDI. So EDIFACT is a EU created message standard that we typically use within Europe. So again, all of your business documents have a EDIFACT format that they can go in, and it is a container. That's what it is. So if we look at what's involved within the EDIFACT standard, it will go through the message line by line. So if we take out one of your paper orders or invoices today and go through each piece of detail that's contained within that document, there is a tag within the EDIFACT that will contain that. And the reason we put it into these interim standards is that there can be systems on both sides of the equation and they can be vastly different to one another. So we need to put it into a common standard so that we can put the message into a format that both ends will understand. It may be that you use a SAP or a Sage system, and on the other side, your customer or supplier is using a Oracle or NAV or AX. All these systems can interlink, but to do so, we do need to put it into a common format. So the ones we typically come across are EDIFACT, TrueCommerce, ANSI X12, you'll often hear it referred to just X12, and XML, I guess, would be the four most prevalent ones out there today. If you're looking at it from a European perspective, EDIFACT will be front and center on that. TrueCommerce is a standard used out of the UK. It was developed by the UK government and is still used in the UK today. No sign of it going away. ANSI X12 we typically see in more so the US, see some of it in Asia, and then sometimes in the likes of Australia as well. Underpinning it all, it's basically the same type. It's just a different container for the data. And XML is, I guess, the most open of all of those, and XML is just a standard for containing a message. So it's tags that contain the message detail on it, and we see that particularly when we're talking about exchanges with warehouses and the likes, where we just need to link up two business systems. It may even be two internal business systems. In terms of connectivity options, the ones you'll hear mostly when it comes to EDI are your value-added networks, your VANs, your FTP connections, which is harnessing internet protocol, and then AS2, likewise using internet protocol. And these are all just secure end-to-end methods of exchanging the data. One thing you want to get away from is the likes of, say, an email connection, whereby there's no proof that it made it to the other side of things. You want an assured connection to the other side so that when you send out a message, you have assurance that it's going to get to the other end of things, and we can do track and trace on all of these documents to understand that they've been picked up by the provider on the other end of things. So who is EDI for? And really EDI can fit in with whatever type of business you are. So Predominantly where people come across it for the first time is where they've been asked to do it by a trading partner, typically a customer of theirs, because customers tend to wield the power when it comes to EDI. They get to dictate the standards and the protocols and mandate it from their side. If you want to trade with them, you have to get on board with what they want to do in terms of EDI. To do so, they've got various different methods of bringing on various different types of suppliers, and we'll touch upon that in a moment. But yeah, at its base, that's what it is. If you've been approached by a customer to use their format, typically the next action here is that you contact a provider like TrueCommerce who will be familiar with that retailer or customer and will be able to tell you what requirements are there when it comes to them. And if we are not familiar with them and they're new to EDI, typically we'll ask to see a message implementation guide, which all of these providers will supply upon demand. The other side of that is that you may be a supplier-facing business and have noticed that you've got a lot of paper coming into you, so you want to flip the coin on that and say, you know what, I want to take all of these documents in an electronic format, and you may be the person then that gets to mandate EDI. Process is exactly the same. So we work with you through your business documents, put them into a EDI standard, and then we will help you contact your supply chain and get your suppliers on board with using the application in a way that's easy for them to do so. And then you may be a business that has a dual facet. You have a supplier facing end and you have a customer facing end. Both sides are burdensome when it comes to paper and requirements on staff. So when you're putting in an EDI system, it can be quite beneficial to try harness as much of that as possible and link the inbound, outbound messages for everything for your suppliers and your customers. And with our application, certainly you can put it all through the same system so that you haven't got a double bubble when it comes to cost or anything like that. You haven't got two different systems to log on to. It's all very familiar and very easy to do. So EDI options. So what can be used when it comes to EDI and what's suitable to do it? I guess the easiest thing for people to get on board and dip their toe on is web EDI. So typically where we see web EDI is a non-integrated web accessible system. So you're not investing in any hardware on your side. In terms of linking it up to your ERP, it's not required because you've got a low volume of document. You just want an ability to raise an EDI format document, and this is the most simplistic way of doing it. We do these in a generic portal, whereby you might just want to have a portal to connect to whoever you want to connect to. And then from a retailer perspective, a lot of them will use retailer portals whereby they want to connect all of their suppliers that don't have EDI today. They want to mop them up, and to do this, they have a supplier portal. This will be specific to them. So you may be familiar with some of the TrueCommerce ones out there, and Booker and Sainsbury's and Musgrave all have supplier portals from TrueCommerce today. And it allows them to take in all documentation in an electronic format, be it from suppliers with EDI today, or be it from guys that are just dipping their toe and need to have a method of getting a document into them. We will typically use web EDI for those smaller guys or lower volume guys. Integrated EDI is the next step up. So it's where we would effectively build a hub for you that would allow you to connect to any of your trading partners, be it supplier or be it customer facing, or indeed both. And the benefit of this over web EDI is that it connects to your ERP. So if you have a Sage, SAP, Nav, AX, any of these applications sitting under it, we're completely agnostic to what we do, so long as it can give us a file type or file variety. In some cases, we have publishers into them. We can connect the EDI to your back office system so that you've got a single point of entry. You're not having to duplicate any effort, and it's scheduled and automated, which is the best side of it. For the most part, you don't have to log on to your EDI. So long as the message is created within your back office system, the logic is there that it can be automatically sent out to your partner. And then the next stage up again is B2B e-commerce. So in the world we are nowadays, and we're all familiar with using marketplaces like Amazon, like eBay, we're familiar with front-end web-based solutions whereby we can go on, we can view what products available to us, we can select from a drop-down how many we want, we can add to a cart, and we can press submit. The same thing can be done with business e-commerce, whereby we have a front-end system that allows users to go in, select from a catalog, build up a order, and that order is then submitted to the owner of the B2B e-commerce platform in the same way as an EDI order would come in. So they get a huge amount of efficiency from that, and from a customer perspective, from the person who is submitting the detail through, they have a very familiar process to do on it, and it's seamless. So how are they deployed, the delivery mechanisms around this? So typically what we'll find is that there's on-premise, outsource, and managed service. And certainly the last two will have more in common with one another, but there is a distinction. On-premise is whereby you would have a piece of EDI software that would sit on a PC or on a server and will allow you to create EDI documents. The onus is on you to understand EDI, and if something goes wrong, you need to be able to fix the message and get it across to your partner. Outsourced is a step above that, whereby you don't need any software or anything or hardware on your end of things. You are logging onto a web-based application. Again, the onus is still on you to get the message correct and to ensure it gets to your partners, but you have the method of doing that. And managed service is typically where TrueCommerce reside as a business, whereby we have a managed service team that sit underneath it all. Our responsibility starts from you handing us the documentation in your format, and from that point on, we're responsible for converting it to the EDI format, for validating it to make sure that it's correct and will be accepted on the other side, and then sending it across to your partner. Should there be an error or difficulty along the way, the managed service are in charge of picking this up. So it's a true outsourcing of the EDI function over, say, just having an application that's not on any of your infrastructure. So types of web EDI, and I did touch upon this. So specific to the retailer, if we look at what the retailers have there today, the vast majority of them have a mandate on using EDI. To do that, they need to have a supplier portal that allows you to log on, view your orders where possible in there, and spin them to create an invoice, send the invoice back to the retailer, and the retailer pulls it in an EDI format. It's all quite straightforward to them, and for the most part, they don't know the distinction between a web-based supplier and an EDI supplier, because it comes in exactly the same format. The difference from you, perhaps as a supplier, will be the amount of effort to get that invoice across to them. And so web-based is certainly focused on smaller suppliers into these that just want to have a lower output in terms of cost, and wants to just accommodate what their customer wants to do. Integrated EDI, yeah, again, it links up to your back office system. That's the big change over it. Also, you tend to have your own hub rather than using a generic retailer hub. So on-premise versus outsource is really a decision that you'll probably have to make very early on in your cycle, unless you in turn intend on swapping it out. So on-premise EDI, I guess the drawback is having to have a piece of hardware or dedicated software that sits on your side, that has your responsibility over it. Typically, the marketplace has moved away from this. It's something we certainly would have seen a lot of 80s, 90s, even into 2000s. We've started certainly to see it more of a move to outsourcing this. People are starting to use more cloud-based applications, and to really fit in line with that, the IT policy is to get an outsourced EDI application. As mentioned, TrueCommerce then go a step above that again with the managed service, which is really a further outsourcing of the service. So what's included within the managed service? So there's the implementation side of things. We have a dedicated implementation team that's what they do day in, day out for all of our different customers. They are responsible for getting your system up and off the ground, connecting with your suppliers, doing all the training and testing, and getting it live. Trading partner onboarding, a real core competency for TrueCommerce as a business. So one of the greatest difficulties is that you can build the greatest EDI system that man has ever known, but unless your trading partners are willing to use it or have an easy way of doing that, they will continue to send you paper. So how do we combat that? Well, because it's something that we've had to do time and time again, and we've become experts in onboarding trading partners, and we've come up with a really seamless method to make things as easy as possible for them to do so. So we have a process that involves taking a supplier from initial contact all the way through to go live, and we own that process, and we keep you involved so that you're aware of what's happening. But for the most part, it's all on us to get everything up and running, get people using the system. There's continuous transaction monitoring. So this is the thing you lose if you're just using a piece of software, is that the onus is still on your staff to check that these messages have gone out in the correct format, haven't failed, and have been accepted on the other side of things. So still quite a lot of work there. Even though you're using EDI, if you don't have that underpinning managed service application in there. And then there's an IT and technical service. So should you require anything from us in terms of what you would see as a unique connection that you're not familiar with, a partner of yours has asked to use AS2 and you have no method of doing AS2 today, we help with that. So our role in things is to connect you to your trading partner in whatever way possible. You shouldn't be too bogged down by it. We'll have a single connection through to and from you, and that's all that you are required to have any support over. The rest of it is on us. So we use our widespread within the globe to harness that, to say we have connection into the vast majority of vans, and also direct connects we can set up as required. All of this is underpinned by our hosted infrastructure. So all TrueCommerce applications are hosted, and we don't require that you have any hardware or software on your side of things. How does that work? Well, here's how it looks, and this is the most simplistic way of looking at how EDI fits in with your business. We would suggest that your environment resides behind that red dotted line on the left-hand side there. So your ERP is within your ownership. So that'll be your SAP, your Sage, your NAV, your AX, whatever you might use as an ERP today, stays within your environment. To get the information in and out, we will ask that you give us a way to do that. So we just need your connection, and then we'll use your protocol as well. So if you say that your preference is to use SFTP, we're happy to do that. We'll take your files to and from you using SFTP. We then put it into the one-time application which sits in the middle. It's hosted, you can log on, you can view it, but it is a managed service, so it will work along in the background and send your files out as received. Then on the other side, we see all the containers that we spoke about earlier in terms of TradeComs, XML, and even PDFs. So PDFs, we're certainly seeing a lot more of in the marketplace today for people that traditional EDI isn't the best fit for, but they've got plenty of paper coming in, and we can use PDF. We can strip the data from PDF and put it into a similar format to EDI, into a container that can come in and out of your back office. So if that's of something of interest, it's definitely available from TrueCommerce today. It can be supplier and customer facing, which is important. You've got a single application that connects you to all of your trading partners, be it buyers or be it sellers. So benefits of EDI, and these are why people invest in this. So you get reduced costs, and you've got certainly less people working on your supply chain, because a lot of it can be automated, and anything that can be automated should be automated if it's not causing any drawbacks. And the way we would see a lot of these business transactions is there is no drawbacks to doing it autonomously, and it should be taken up. So we're trying to increase that productivity without increasing staff. So the more business you take in, the better it is for you. But the hard part of it is that you get to a tipping point whereby you need to bring on additional staff to service this. EDI gives a way of bringing on more business into your business without having to add on additional members of staff. There's increased speed and efficiency. Again, a pretty core thing when you're speaking about orders in particular. Invoices are less time sensitive by nature, but we want to get orders in as quickly as possible. So as soon as they're posted, we want them available to us in our back office system. EDI enables that. So what we want is, well, I guess if you're a buyer, you want reduced lead times and lower inventory levels. We don't want stock sitting on shelves unnecessarily. We want to get a good handle on our supply chain. EDI enables that. It allows us to keep close control of our suppliers, and we can monitor who's a good or bad supplier. We can monitor what type of usage of stock we're going through, when we're going to need it, and how quickly we can get that in is vital to all of that. What we're trying to do with EDI is eliminate the manual entry. So we've seen that at the very beginning of this as to how systems used to be configured, and there was a lot of duplication of effort in terms of typing in orders, retrieving orders, and then re-entering that order detail in. with EDI, we can just pass them documentations back and forth between systems without having any human intervention at all. And then we've got a shorter order to cash cycle. So if you're supplying your stock in, you want to know that your invoice has been received and that it's going to get paid. EDI gives a great visibility into doing that, and it removes all disputes along the way to say that invoices weren't received, they were inaccurate. These are all the purposes of EDI in the middle. So reduction of errors associated with manual data entry. So this is an important thing. Keystroke errors will occur. It doesn't matter how good you are at typing. If you're a human entering in repetitive data, you will have keystroke errors, or you will have a misinterpretation. Misinterpretations can happen because that's human nature. If we're talking business system to business system, misinterpretations don't happen because data is data. It has to be fixed. It has to be logical. So compliance with key trading partners. So when a big customer comes to you and asks for EDI, your response should absolutely be, we can comply with that. We definitely want to stay on side with them. We want to harness their efficiencies as well as our own. We want them to be able to order as much as possible from us, and we want to be able to get paid as quickly as possible. It should not be seen as a barrier to entry EDI. It's accessible and it's open to everybody. So real-time visibility in the supply chain. So if you're a decision maker and all of these various systems sit underneath you, pulling out reports can be a once a month job, or even worse than that, once a quarter. And that's when the reviews happen as to how are we doing as a business, because it's too easy to get tied up in the day-to-day and too hard to pull out reports from several different systems and compare and make logic of them. Because we're receiving so much data through the EDI application, and we can collate that into management reports, and they're available within the application. It allows for someone who isn't on the coal face of things to log in, get quick reports then as to, it might be how suppliers are performing, how we're performing as a supplier, and how many invoices are outstanding, how quickly were we to process orders. All of this detail is available within the system today, depending on what integrations you've got in and out of your back office system. So I guess as a business, EDI is a core principle for what we do. It's not the be all and end all. So because we process your data, it makes sense for us as a business to have various different facets that not only cater for your EDI, but also for other parts of the business that may need to communicate with another party. We do that in a number of different ways. So we have the likes of catalog management with product inventory management. We have an order management facility. The B2B commerce platform, which we spoke about earlier, just opens up your business to customers that may not be too open to submitting orders in a paper format. They want to be able to see what product is there. They want to be able to read the specification of the product. All of this is quite difficult to do in a system whereby it's not linked up. With our services, we try to link up all the data pieces that we have today so that consumers have the ability to access what they need when they're making a purchasing decision, submit an order to you. It autonomously comes into your back office system, and the supply chain then can be configured around the drop ship model. All these things are available within the TrueCommerce Foundry platform, and it's all accessible then through your Foundry module. So you may only use one time to begin with, which is our EDI platform. But outside of that, then there's options to connect into marketplaces, to storefronts, all of your suppliers as well as your customers. And then you've got the likes of a collaborative replenishment with VMI. So there's all these different facets that can be added on and built around your solution, and all coming through the same service provider, which just builds a lot of efficiencies on your end of things and future-proofs you as to what applications you're going to put in. At this point, I'll hand back over to Robert.
Okay, thank you for that, Keith. Now, before we finish, I do just want to pick up on some of the questions we've had through today. So let me just take a look at this. So the first question we've had, Keith, is what is the difference between EDI standards and connectivity types?
Okay, so I think we had a slide earlier on the presentation that covered it, but it is by far the most complex thing in terms of terminology on it. So connectivity types, we're looking at the likes of WAN, FTP, AS2. It's just a way of the two systems linking up together. When we talk about the formats that it's in, EDI formats, we're talking more so along EDIFACT, Traded Comms, X12, these varieties. But all they should be seen as containers for the data that we send out today. They're nothing more complex than that. We would never ask a customer to fully understand any of those formats. That's for us to understand and for us to help you with.
Okay, brilliant. Next question is, how can I ensure I can implement EDI as quickly as possible when asked by my customer?
Okay, it's a common one, I guess, in that most people, when they approach us, it's because there's a reason that they've been asked to do it. And typically, I guess because we're such a varied business and we've got such a geographic spread, we tend to have came across the requirements before. So if we get a request to connect with Jumbo or Albert Heijn or Walmart, we've done this throughout Europe and the US. So we know what standards they require of you. We know what information they require. We know how to connect to them. But it may be that you need to connect to a party that we have came across for the very first time. Maybe they're new to EDI or to a new marketplace. And in those cases, we typically ask standardized information from them. So we typically ask for a message implementation guide or a MIG, which outlines what messages they want to use and how they'd like to connect. And then we'd ask for a contact person over on their end of things. And because this is a conversation between EDI providers rather than a conversation between you and their EDI provider, we like to have a contact person over there that we can speak to, get it set up on your behalf, and then next thing you know, we're at a testing cycle and we're sending test messages across. So it is all managed by us. All we would require is a little bit of information up front, but we'll walk you through the process when the time needs.
So it's made as easy as possible. That's brilliant. And then how do I ensure I choose a good managed service to support my solution?
Yeah, it's a very valid question in that I've been around EDI for a long time now, and I remember managed service being talked up by each and every provider, that everyone seemed to have a managed service, and they massively diverged from one another, I must say, as to what they did. For me, if you're looking for a managed service, is to ask the question as to how much involvement do I have on a day-to-day basis? How much of a managed service is this? And then even on setup, how much am I involved on the setup side of things? Do you really take the baton and run with it? What underpins your managed service? So what sits beneath that? The term is too much of a coverall, I guess, to just take it on merit and say, oh, well, a managed service will do everything. How will the managed service work for me, I guess, is the question I'd ask on it. And then speak to, and I guess before making a decision, ask for reference calls or to have a list of customers that use that service today. That gives a good feel that it's going to be a good fit for you if they've got experience in your industry or certainly in your locality, even with people that you're familiar with. If they've served them well in the past, it's a good sense that they'll serve you well in the future.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we've got one last question here. Which roles within an organization benefit from EDI and which team usually implements it?
It's an interesting one. So I guess typically we'd be contacted from the finance side of things. So finance tends to be the driver on this, and because there's a cost benefit in doing so. And usually sitting behind this, though, there are certainly an IT interest in doing it, because they either get to outsource some software or hardware that they have to look after before that, or they need to link up their back office system to us. So there's a little bit of involvement with the IT side of things. They tend not to be the driver of it, though. Unless we're looking at the likes of the B2B marketplace as well, we might see more of an interest from an IT side of things to push that upon us to implement a solution, because it's tried and tested, rather than trying to create something new that would be specific to them and bespoke. Then, of course, on the operations side of things, they'd have an involvement in that they would leverage what we're giving them in terms of automated documentation to improve their processes. So there would be an element within the business in terms of operations where there'd be an interest on that side of things as to how they can make their lives easier by harnessing what's available in the marketplace today. Okay,
brilliant. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Robert.
I think that's all we've got time for today, but I can actually see a few more questions popping in now. So I think what we'll do is we'll look to follow up all questions with participants after the webinar. Lastly, for anyone who would like a copy of the webinar, we will be sending a link to the recording in the coming days. If you do need to get in touch with TrueCommerce, we have offices in the UK, Ireland, Denmark, and contact details for each of these offices can be found above. Thank you to everyone who joined the webinar today, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.